In the beginning, there was nothing.
One eternity later.
One day, God decided to create the universe. In that universe, he created the earth. On the earth was plants, animals, skies, and oceans. God decided to create a person in his own image. God called this man Adam. When Adam was sleeping one day, God carefully removed one of his ribs. Using that rib, he created Eve. God decided these people would rule over animals and that everything was very good. The only rule God made for his people in the garden, called the Garden of Eden, was to not eat one type of fruit that grew on one of the many fruit-bearing trees. Now would be a good time to mention the evilest being in the universe, Satan. His name used to be Lucifer, though, and he lived peacefully with the angels in heaven, along with God. But he was very jealous of all the attention and power humans were getting, and tempted Eve into eating the fruit. Eve liked the fruit, so she gave some to Adam. Immediately after Adam ate the fruit, they both realized they were naked. They hid behind some trees in the garden. I don't know why they tried to hide from an all-knowing God, which obviously didn't turn out great for them. Because of their actions, God punished the rest of human history with pain, death, and suffering. That fruit better have tasted good. Satan was expelled from heaven and now deceives people for the rest of human history. Adam and Eve set up a place to live outside the garden. God made a promise that one day he would send a Messiah to rescue the earth from sin. Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain was jealous that God favored his brother, so he had the brilliant idea to murder him. God banished Cain but promised to protect him. Adam and Eve had another son named Seth. One of Seth's descendants was named Noah. Noah's times were very wicked. Angels saw that human women were very beautiful, so they left heaven to marry them. Their children were giants, and these angels became the fallen angels. Oh, and there was also murder and stuff going on. God commanded Noah to build a giant boat so he could flood the whole earth and destroy all evil. When the boat was finished, a pair of all animals entered the ark. And on February 16th, negative 2348, the whole earth flooded. Noah and his family were on the ark for 5 months before finally stepping foot on dry land. God created the rainbow to symbolize a covenant with all of mankind not to destroy them again, and that he will always be there for us. I wish it still had the same meaning. Noah had 3 sons, and his middle child, Ham, decided to have a child with his mother. This child was named Canaan, and God cursed him. The people of Earth wanted to build a giant tower to make a name for themselves and reach the heavens. God didn't want them to finish this tower, so he threw them all over Earth and made sure that they spoke a different language. Shem, Noah's firstborn, had a descendant named Abram. Abram knew his wife Sarai was beautiful, so he pretended to be her brother while entering Egypt so he didn't get murdered. One of Abram's messengers informed him that his nephew Lot had been kidnapped. He traveled all the way north of Damascus to rescue him. It was here that God promised Abram his descendants would be like the stars in the sky, and changed his name to Abraham. After hearing this, Sarah, Sarai's new name, gave Abraham her servant Hagar as a wife because she thought she was too old for childbirth. But Sarah was abusive towards Hagar, so she fled to the desert. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring and told her to go back to Sarah. I'm not going to draw this part, but God ordered all the males to be circumcised, so they did that. 3 strangers visited Abraham and told him that Sarah would soon have a son. Meanwhile, Lot was living in the city of Sodom, which along with Gomorrah was very sinful. God sent 2 angels to destroy the city, and anyone who looked back would turn to a pillar of salt. This was unfortunately the case for Lot's wife. Lot's daughters survived though, but they were both childless, so they took turns getting their father drunk so they could have a child through him. Sarah finally gave birth to her son, who was named Isaac. Sarah thought that Ishmael, Hagar's son, would rule over Isaac because he was older, so she convinced Abraham to send them away into the desert once more. Ishmael was dying of dehydration, and once God opened Hagar's eyes, she saw fresh water. God ordered Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Abraham was about to do so when the angel of the Lord stopped him and gave him a goat instead. When Sarah died, Abraham bought a field and buried her in a cave on that field. Isaac decided to marry his cousin's daughter named Rebekah. Then Abraham died, so Isaac and Ishmael buried their father in the same cave as Sarah. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Isaac was now old and could barely see, so he wanted to give his blessing to Esau. Rebekah, however, favored Jacob and told him to take the blessing since Isaac could hardly see. But Esau was a hairy man, so Jacob wore a fur coat so Isaac wouldn't notice. When Esau heard this, he was furious with Jacob, and Jacob had to leave. Jacob met his cousin Rachel and wanted to marry her. Her father Laban only agreed to it if he worked on his land for 7 years. When he finally got to marry Rachel, it was dark outside. When he woke up, it turned out to be Rachel's older and less beautiful sister Leah. In order for Jacob to marry Rachel, he had to work another 7 years. This led to a lot of drama between the sisters. Leah bore Jacob 3 sons, but Rachel wasn't able to give birth, so she gave Jacob her servant Bilhah as a wife to give him 2 more sons, and now Leah wasn't able to give birth anymore, so she gave Jacob her servant Zilpah to give him 2 more sons, but then Leah was able to give birth again and gave him 2 more sons and a daughter, and finally Rachel was able to give birth and bore him a son named Joseph, who was the obvious favorite child. But then Jacob overheard Laban's sons spreading lies about Jacob to their father, so Jacob and his family fled Laban, who chased them. But they learned Esau was also heading towards them with 400 men. That night Jacob saw a mysterious man. They started wrestling each other, and Jacob had him pinned on the ground and wouldn't let go unless he blessed him. The man blessed him and said his new name was Israel. Jacob was in shock. Firstly, he had just had a wrestling match with God and won. Secondly, he had been spared even after all his wrongdoings. He looked up, Esau was there with 400 men. Luckily, Esau was overjoyed to see his brother again. Some random guy named Shechem saw Dinah, Jacob's only daughter, and did something terrible. He tried to make a deal with her brothers so he could marry her, but the brothers must have had their fingers crossed because 3 days later, Simeon and Levi entered his city and killed every man there. Obviously what they did was bad, but at least they were sticking up for their sister. Rachel ended up dying giving birth to her last son, Benjamin. Joseph was the obvious favorite, and his brothers were jealous. They plotted to kill him, but big brother Reuben shoots down the idea. Instead, they sold him, and Judah stained his jacket with blood to fake his death. Judah went on to marry the daughter of Shua and had 3 sons. His oldest, married Tamar. Was a wicked man, so God put him to death. I won't be saying what Onan did, but you can read it in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 to 10. After Onan died, Judah sent Tamar away. I won't tell the story either, sorry. When Judah found out his old daughter-in-law was pregnant and had his staff and goat, he realized his mistake. Tamar gave birth to twins. Meanwhile, Joseph had been granted everything Potiphar, Pharaoh's high-ranking official, owned. Potiphar's wife really liked him, but Joseph resisted her. Potiphar's wife told Potiphar her own version of the story, which got Joseph thrown into prison. Joseph was able to explain 2 people's dreams while in prison, which allowed him to decipher Pharaoh's dream and predicted a famine. So before the famine happened, the Egyptians stored tons of food to prepare. During the famine, Joseph's brothers, not recognizing him, came back to ask for food. Joseph made them bring Benjamin so he knew that he was okay. Then his servants filled all of the brothers' sacks with food. Joseph couldn't take it anymore, so he revealed himself to his brothers, and they brought Jacob to Egypt to see him. Joseph chose 5 of his brothers to convince Pharaoh to let them live in Egypt. When Jacob was about to die, he gathered all his sons for their blessings. They would become the 12 tribes of Israel. When Jacob died, Joseph was very upset, and before he died, he made sure to let his brothers know that there was no hard feelings about selling him. There was a new Egyptian king that came to power, who thought the Israelites were pests. So the Egyptians made them slaves. The Egyptians worked them ruthlessly and made them make bricks and work in the fields. To slowly eliminate the Israelites, Pharaoh ordered the midwives to kill off newborn boys, but let newborn girls live. The midwives didn't do this, however, so God was kind to them. Pharaoh changed his order and now wants every Hebrew boy that is born to be thrown into the Nile River. 2 Levites gave birth to a son. The child's mother made him a basket and hid it in the reeds of the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter found this basket, and the child's sister was watching nearby. Pharaoh's daughter wanted a Hebrew woman to care for the child, so the child's sister brought the child's mother to care for him. When he grew up, he became Pharaoh's daughter's son. She named him Moses. Moses was watching his people work one day and saw an Egyptian beating a slave. Moses killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand.
The next day.
He saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked why, and one responded, "Do you want to kill me like you killed that Egyptian?" Moses' bad deed was now known, and Pharaoh tried to kill him, but he fled. He stayed at a man named Reuel's house, who gave Moses his granddaughter, Zipporah, to marry. The king of Egypt died, and the Israelites cried out to God, who felt bad for them. While Moses was tending to livestock, the angel of the Lord lit a nearby bush on fire. He went to look at this strange bush, which was on fire, but didn't burn. God talked to him through the bush, and told him to take off his shoes. God told him that he had heard the cries of the Israelites and wanted to free them, promising the Holy Land, a land that flowed with milk and honey. He told Moses to perform signs to prove the existence of God to Pharaoh. But Moses was too scared, so God had to convince him to do it with his brother Aaron. So Moses talked to Pharaoh to let their people go, but Pharaoh just made them work harder, because now they have to harvest the straw for the bricks. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. Aaron threw his staff on the floor, turning it into a snake. Pharaoh's sorcerers were able to do the same thing, but Aaron's snake ate all of the other snakes. God then sentenced plagues of blood, frogs, gnats, flies, plague on livestock, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, he killed every firstborn of every family who didn't put a perfect lamb's blood around their door. After all of this, Pharaoh finally agreed to let the Israelites go. Pharaoh immediately changed his mind because he was so hard-hearted and sent an army to chase after them. The Israelites were trapped behind the Red Sea, so God created smoke to distract the army, while Moses used his staff to split the Red Sea for them to safely cross, closing it again to swallow Pharaoh's soldiers. The Israelites were now stranded in the desert and didn't have food. God provided a rice-like food called manna and a lot of quail. But now they needed water, so Moses took a rock and broke it open with his staff, creating water. Suddenly the Amalekites attacked their camp. Moses told them that as long as he kept his hands raised, they would be winning the battle. But soon Moses grew tired, so Aaron and Joshua, an important man from Israel, held Moses' hands up in the air so they could remain winning the battle. Moses sent his wife, Zipporah, back home to her father. She returned with him shortly after. Jethro, Zipporah's father, advised creating judges to help Moses with settling disputes. Moses did this by choosing capable men from each tribe. They camped in front of Mount Sinai. People who touched the mountain before the ram horn sounded were stoned to death. God descended dramatically to the mountain with loud trumpet blasts. God called Moses up to the mountain. The other people were too scared to go up there, so God told Moses to bring Aaron up there. God gave Moses the 10 Commandments to write on stones. No idols. Don't make yourself an image of God. Don't misuse his name. Remember the Sabbath day. Honor your mother and father. No murder. No adultery. No stealing. No false testimonies about your neighbor. And don't covet anything your neighbor owns. The Israelites agreed to follow all of God's terms. The Lord had some Israelites make an ark, the Ark of the Covenant. This ensures God's promise to keep them safe and bring them to the Promised Land. They built a tabernacle with a special table and lampstand. There was also an altar for sacrifices made using special instructions from the Lord. Moses was up on the mountain for several days at times, and one time when he was coming down the mountain with 2 stone tablets containing the covenant law, the Israelites were all worshipping a golden calf. Moses was very angry. He threw the tablets on the ground, and they shattered. The calf was made by Aaron, who held a festival with sacrifices to it. Moses convinced God not to destroy them, but they all suffered a plague. God then told them to continue without him because they might make him so angry that he just straight up kills them all. God had Moses make 2 new stone tablets, just like the first 2. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face was glowing. The people were frightened, so Moses put a veil over his face. As the Israelites finished building the tabernacle, Moses inspected it. He placed the fancy lampstand and the table inside the tabernacle. The cloud settled on the tent of meeting, and whenever it lifted is when they set out for the next part of their journey. They were led by a cloud by day and by a pillar of fire by night. God met with Moses in the tent of meeting, and said if anyone sins they should make an offering to the Lord, because it is a pleasing aroma. Before anyone tries this at home, sacrifices are no longer necessary to being forgiven. This was just temporary. Aaron and his sons were ordained so that they were able to perform the sin offering. Aaron and his sons did this sin offering themselves as part of their ministry. This involved slaughtering a calf at an altar. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu, offered unauthorized fire,
A few moments later.
swallowed them up, and burned them to death. Aaron was no longer allowed to enter the Holy Land once they got there because of this. All of the sacrifices offered to God must be made without defect, preferably their best ones. God gave all of his citizens laws to follow because he was basically the king of this country. One man was put to death because he committed blasphemy. Moses wrote down all of these laws in his book. The Lord told Moses to take a census of every tribe except Levi, because they were in charge of the tabernacle and law. God told everyone where they would be camping in the Holy Land. God then reinstated his laws, telling everyone that if they broke them, they would be banished. Anyone who was sick of a disease was sent outside the camp to keep the camp clean. If someone wants to become a Nazirite, they shouldn't cut their hair, eat anything with grapes, or go near a dead body. The Israelites held a 12-day festival, where each day one of the leaders would bring a sacrifice. They made 7 gold lampstands. When the day of the Passover came, many Israelites couldn't celebrate because there had been a dead body that made them unclean. The cloud would sit over the tabernacle when they should remain camped, and lifted when they should move. God told Moses to make 2 silver trumpets. If both were sounded, the whole community met. If just one was sounded, the leaders would meet. The cloud lifted, and the Israelites finally left Sinai. The Israelites were angry at the Lord, because they didn't trust his plan. God burned the outskirts of the camp, consuming many people. The Israelites were then growing tired of eating manna, so God sent them some quail. Moses called the elders to the tent, and God put the Spirit on them. 2 men, Eldad and Medad, were upset they didn't get invited, and started prophesying in the camp. Joshua told Moses to stop them, but Moses said no, because he wished that everyone would have the Spirit. While the Israelites did get their quail, God was still angry with them and plagued them, killing everyone who craved other food. Miriam and Aaron opposed Moses for marrying a Cushite. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else in the face of the earth. Wait, didn't Moses write this? The Lord explained to Aaron and Miriam that Moses was just very special. God talks to him like a friend, and without any riddle. Aaron turned toward Miriam and saw she now had a defiling skin disease. Moses cried out to the Lord to heal her, and he told them to send her outside the camp for 7 days. Then she could come back.
1 week later.
After she returned, the Israelites went to explore Canaan. The leaders of the tribes returned, saying, "The land is flowing of milk and honey, but there are very powerful cities they need to conquer." That night the whole Israelite community rebelled against Moses and Aaron, who fell face down in front of the whole community. Joshua and Caleb came forward and tore their clothes, saying the land they explored was exceedingly good. If God was pleased with them, they can have it all for themselves. God wanted to kill them all, but Moses once again had to convince them. God did, however, say that no one who had fled Egypt would get to see the promised land. The men who explored the land and gave a bad report were killed by a plague. A man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. They brought him to Moses, who kept him in custody. Then God ordered the whole assembly to take him out of the camp and stone him. God had all the Israelites create tassels on the corner of their garments to remind them not to chase after the lust of their hearts. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram led a revolt of 250 Israelite men against Moses. These men were well-known community leaders who probably wanted more power for themselves. Moses told everyone to stand away from them, and the earth ate them, along with their wives and children. Then the fire of the Lord swallowed up the 250 men. The Israelites were once again angry at Moses, but Aaron made atonement for them. God ordered Aaron to make one staff for all the leaders of Israel. In the desert of Zin, Miriam died and was buried. Moses smacked his staff twice on a rock, creating the waters of Miriam. Moses sent messengers to Edom to ask if they could pass through, but they said no. Before entering Edom, Aaron and his people gathered on Mount Hor, where Aaron died. While the Israelites headed toward Arad, they were attacked. The Israelites pleaded with the Lord to deliver these people into their hands. God heard them and allowed the Israelites to completely destroy the kingdom of Arad. The Israelites then started to complain about being in the desert again. God sent venomous snakes against them, and many Israelites died. Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who had been bitten could look at it and survive. The cities of Sihon and Og also didn't let the Israelites pass through, so the Israelites destroyed them as well. As the Moabites heard of the Israelites' conquers, they were scared of them. The Moabite Balak ordered the Moabite Balaam to go curse the Israelites, but God told Balaam not to, so Balaam refused. Balak really wanted Balaam to go with them, so God told Balaam to go with them and only do as he says. When Balaam saddled his donkey, the next morning he began to ride down the street. It rode off the road. Balaam beat him and continued riding. They entered a narrow walkway through vineyards, and the donkey pressed up against the wall, crushing Balaam's foot. He beat the donkey again and kept riding. Finally, when the donkey was walking in a path with no room to turn, it sat down. Balaam beat the donkey again, and the donkey said, "What have I done to make you beat me these 3 times?" Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes to see the angel of the Lord standing there, sword drawn. The angel of the Lord explained that he was going to kill Balaam if the donkey didn't stop. Balaam was allowed to continue with Balak, but he could only do things that God told him to. When the Israelites reached Moab, the Moabite women seduced the Israelite men, inviting them to the sacrifices of their gods. God commanded the Israelites to kill all the leaders of the Moabs. An Israelite man brought into the camp a Midianite woman right in front of Moses and Eleazar, son of Aaron. Eleazar grabbed a spear and killed them both, ending the plague. After the plague, Israel took a second census. God told the Israelites to take vengeance on the Midianites, so they went there and killed every man. Then they killed all boys and finally every woman that wasn't a virgin. God then told them what each tribe's boundaries in Canaan will be, and to designate cities of refuge and land for the daughters of Zelophehad, who died for his sins in the wilderness. The Israelites moved from Horeb to the hill country of the Amorites. They sent spies into the land who told everyone how great the land is. But the Israelites were unwilling to enter the land. They went back to wandering in the wilderness. They passed by the land God had given to Esau's descendants. Then they passed by the land of the descendants of Lot. Sihon didn't let the Israelites through the Heshbon kingdom, however, so God wanted to give them over to the Israelites. At the battle of Jahaz, the Israelites defeated the Heshbonites. Not one town in Heshbon was too strong for the Israelites. Og, king of Bashan, sent his army in response to this. God told the Israelites not to be afraid, and they easily defeated them. They destroyed all 60 of Bashan's cities. The Israelites divided up the land of Og. Moses pleaded with God to let him see the promised land, but God told him no, and not to bring it up again. God then reinforced his laws to the Israelites. Moses set aside certain cities as refuge for people who have accidentally sinned. Moses then reminded them of the 10 Commandments and the other laws God has instructed to Moses. God told them that they must completely destroy everyone living in the promised land. No treaties, no mercy, nothing. God then told them to never forget him. He instructed them to cross the Jordan to defeat nations much stronger than them. But before they went, he reminded them of their biggest mistakes. He told them to love and obey the Lord. Judges and officials were appointed in every town the Lord gave them, and they were to do the same in every new town they acquired. God will eventually let them have a king, but he must choose who it is. But the next time they asked, he still said no.
Tomorrow.
And the time after that.
Tomorrow for sure.
Before every war, a priest would stand in front of the army and tell everyone who doesn't want to fight to go home. It didn't matter if they had less soldiers because the Lord was with them. If anyone was killed and no one knew who the murderer was, they would go to the nearest man who didn't have a job, break his neck, and let him do work for the Lord. If any Israelite man wanted to marry a captive woman, they had to let her live with him while she mourned her parents before marrying her. If a man had 2 wives, he wasn't allowed to give the firstborn rights to his favorite wife's oldest, if his non-favorite wife had an older son. If anyone had a rebellious son, he was stoned to death. If anyone saw their neighbor needing help on the side of the road, they must help them. Women can't wear men's clothes and vice versa. Put a wall around your roof so if someone falls off, you won't feel guilty. And don't plow with an ox and a donkey yoked together. If there is any marriage violation, there was a really high chance someone was going to be stoned to death. Moses told them to put a stone on each side of the Jordan once they have crossed. When Moses was 120 years old, he stepped down as leader, handing it off to Joshua, Moses sang the Israelites a song, blessed each tribe, and went to the top of Mount Nebo to die. With that, the prophet closest to God had died. God buried Moses, never to be discovered by anyone.